Yong and Andy. Yong applied to speak at the Atelier for 2020, I think. And we were really excited to have her. And we finally got her, so I cannot wait to see her speak with Andy. So thank you so much for coming. And yeah, enjoy.
Thank you. Everybody hears me? Yeah. Wonderful. So let me start. So I had a very good introduction for saying hello and all that, but I'm completely going off script. But you won't know, I'm just telling you, so now you do. So we want to talk about how are we going to go from me to we and work stronger together. So it's going to be a lot about collaboration and working with the team. A lot of the things that you have heard before, but we want to also talk about shifting left, which you have heard about before, but also shifting right. But we want to take it a bit out of the testers aspect, but also bring the aspect of other people and what does it look like for them. And we want to talk about how do we get out of our individual roles, the roles and the titles that the company has given us when we applied for the role, and how do we bring the conversations that many times happen in retros, like what has happened, what should have we done, what actions do we take next, how do we bring those conversations further, because why should we wait for something to go wrong that we talk about actions and where everybody talks about how they feel and what they think. So introductions. So just to make it clear, I'm not Andy, I'm Yong, because you could be making that mistake. And so I originally started at Booking, which was rental cars at the time, based in Manchester. And now we have become part of Booking, and I actually live in Glasgow, so I come down whenever I want some sun. And I worked myself up there. I started at the call center, and with all the different skills that I could transfer, I moved into a test engineering role, went from senior, and then it was 2020, so I was looking for new horizons. And then Andy happened, and we met in Food Asylum, and I started there as a principal QA, where I was working in one team, but I was also helping out in other teams and juniors. And at the time there was, I'm sorry, this will be a bit of your introduction as well, but it's part of my story, I can't help it. So when Andy, who was head of engineering at the time, moved on, the role that he was doing was split into two, so head of engineering, head of QA. I was successful with my application and did that. And after a while, I was really missing the customer interaction and the globality of the kind of business that Booking is. So during last year, I returned there as an engineering manager in test. And then we've got Andy.
Hello.
No,
so,
it stays with me.
You can keep that. So my name's Andy, so I'm the senior engineering manager at Prolific. I've been at Prolific for about 6 months or so. Before that, I was at Cinch for a couple of years, me and Rylan. And then before that, I was at Full-Sound, which is where I met you.
So, so what we wanted to talk about is how there are different constraints. We want to move away from a lot of the hot topics these days is the AI, ChatGPT and all that. We want to bring us back to the humanity of the work we do, because in the end of the day, we are humans working with humans to produce an end product that is for humans. And all these other tools and software and machines we are using is just a means for that purpose. So in order to do that, we need to acknowledge our constraints. And these are the constraints that are things that you don't straight away see, because we tend to, especially the higher up the chain you go and with stakeholders and all that, it's very easy to focus on the obvious material constraints, such as more resources, different stages, let's add more to the process, and focus on the output. We have had 1,000 of these. Why does it not work? What about, but we are producing so much. What do you mean we are not growing? The numbers are growing. So we need to bring back the human element, where we need to focus on the people. How do we build up our confidence as people? Focus on the outcome, the end result, rather than the output. the progress itself rather than if we have 10 stages, so many quality gates and bottlenecks, it must be good, right? And the actual growth, what growth means. And by talking about the constraints and acknowledging them, that these are almost like the non-functional requirements of a team, of a company, we will be able to address the things that matter, that actually will end up saving money and time when, instead of throwing more bodies into something. So there are a few quite common constraints, but we are going to address a few here. So first one would be lack of understanding of what people actually do, and then what are the value streams. So I mentioned in the beginning that we want to also take the focus a bit away from testers only. I'm assuming in the audience, testers, QAs, hands up. Claire, you still kind of count. So I think we do a lot of test advocacy. We talk about, oh, we really struggle because we need to get developers to understand why testing is important. We need to get people to understand us. But I think one of the things is that we need to, as we go further with our advocacy and all that, we need to also understand that we are, if there is a test column, I hope you don't have one, but if you do, you know what I mean. We need to think about that, yes, we struggle with this, but product and developers especially, they many times have their own columns as well. So they actually, many times unknowingly, struggle with the same as us, that they are in their column waiting for something to come to them and waiting to pass on something. So in order to help us all out of it, we need to actually make them understand that in order for testing and quality and everything else to move, they need to be moving as well. And this is what I meant, that it's not only shifting left, but also shifting right. The product owner, who is usually quite in the beginning of the journey or design, they need to actually start moving a bit backwards as well, that they are with us along that journey the whole time. And if we think about all these roles, if there are, so people who actually, and roles who aim to getting involved as early as possible, understanding the full cycle of the product, identifying dependencies and untangle any complex work, understanding the risks, and expanding our capabilities. I think none of these roles would say, no, that's not my job, it's the job of the next guy. And then who would actually, out of these roles, wish to say that I want to be the gatekeeper? And once again, I don't want to say traditionally, but a lot of times it's test that is seen as gatekeeper. But if you think about it, if product says, no, I'm not happy with this, if design says, I'm not happy with this, they are also the same, they're just in different stages of the same thing. And I'm sure none of these roles should or doesn't wish to be the silo of the information or the experience of, working with the team, understanding the customers, be limited to only a specific stage of the CDLC, so that's the column again, whether it's visible or invisible, making uninformed decisions. If you're making it alone, even if you think you are informed, you probably aren't. And then having this us versus them mentality, which goes back to how do we go from me to we. So in order to do that, in order to move ourselves out of those columns and help others understand that they actually have their stage and they need to start preaching out of them, we need to stop using the stereotypes where QAs are breaking stuff, developers are just Googling their code, people are just doing some stuff, some magic, and it happens. We need to try to understand what do they actually do, what does the data team do, what does the finance team do, whatever they do will impact us. So we are not just saying that, oh yeah, that team is working on some stuff. We need to understand what that stuff is. And this is the only way we can unblock further and provide the value that we are trying to provide, because we need to understand what we are unblocking so we can see whatever we can do differently or help them with it. And speaking of value,
Thank you very much. Should we swap
Yes.
over, otherwise I'm going to keep bumping into you because I waddle about when I'm talking. So I'm going to talk about value streams for a couple of... Anyone familiar with value streams? A couple of people. Brilliant. So this is the boring bit. Apologies. So in an organisation, you've got a value stream, okay? So it's kind of the end-to-end of value. So let's say you are an online shoe retailer that we maybe have worked at in the past. There's a bunch of steps that need to happen if they're online, okay? From the shoes coming into the business, to them being in a warehouse, to being shipped to a customer, to landing on a customer's doorstep. Lots of steps that need to happen in, like, where value happens, okay? And then we've got this other kind of value stream, which is a little bit more... So if we think of the end-to-end operational value stream, we've then got a secondary value stream, which is the development value stream. So this is the team, what the team do. So if we've got the operational value stream, and in that there's a step that's maybe the logistics team. That team has its own value stream, okay? With me so far? That makes sense? Cool, so there's two of them. Okay. And the development value stream looks a little bit like this, okay? All these different steps that need to happen in order for us to do the thing we need to do. We've got the very start when we're trying to work out what we're doing, product, building, shipping, supporting, analytics, incidents, everything that needs to happen and a team does, okay? And these aren't the same thing, those two things I'm trying to mention. The reason why I'm talking about them is because the development value stream, all the things we do, enables the operational value stream, okay, as a business. It's where we add our value. And every step adds value, but every gap in between doesn't. If you've got 2 days for the shoe to leave the warehouse to then be put on a truck, that's 2 days of waste, right? Right there, waste. And then I suppose I've come back to what we do in our teams. It's mainly this, right? We build stuff, we ship stuff, we support stuff. That's kind of what we do every day. And I've not put testing in there. There's a very good reason for that. So I think there's two things, okay? We think there's two things that you need to do as a team. First one is optimize for flow. And the second one is kind of focusing on lead time, okay? These are fundamentally the two things we can do in a development value stream. So like for the first one, we need to optimize for flow. What we're actually saying is we want a fast flow of change. Right? We don't want handovers. We don't want that lag time. We want to be able to move through as quickly as possible and get value through without having to hand off to other teams, yeah? And the second one is we want to focus on lead time, which means we want a fast feedback loop. So lead time is how long does it take from something starting to something finishing with value, okay? It's really bad, it's like in maths. So it's all about flow, okay? At the end of the day, it's flow. Think of it as flow. Flow through a system. We've got people, systems, process, all these things that need to happen. Okay, is anyone familiar with team topologies in the room? A couple of people, X. So Team Topology is a book, and in that book it talks about this model of organisational design, okay? And it's how you structure your teams. And we're saying that each of these teams is responsible for its end-to-end ownership, yeah? We shouldn't have handovers, we should have good interactions between teams, but if we've got like maybe this is the front page of the website team, that's a terrible name for a team, and maybe they need some stuff from the platform team. They should have an interaction, but that interaction shouldn't be blocking. It shouldn't be that we wait for them to do their thing, okay? We should be moving towards the flow. And the reason being is we don't want this situation to occur where we've got the team is the devs. We've all heard that, the devs, and then everyone else is outside of that team. The DevOps people, the UX people, product people, QA testers outside of the team, not kind of part of the flow, getting things last minute. We don't want this. We don't want these handovers from teams. Because we've probably all been in a situation where someone's had to raise a ticket about DevOps stuff. Right? It happens in every organisation. We want this. We want flow. We want everything in the team that needs to be there. All the roles, all the capabilities, all the skills and experience within that team, yeah? Because we don't want a team that has functional silos. We don't want a team where the front end is owned by one team, the back end is owned by another. They need to own it full end to end, okay, if they're part of the value stream. So we need to work together. And I think we need to work together to reduce the lead time to business impact, okay? So that's from the very start of something happening to it having an impact for the customer. That's where the value is, okay? Anything that kind of helps us to win more business. Anything that slows us down gets in the way, okay? So the way I want to break this down is just explain what I mean by business impact and lead time. So if we think of like a very noddy example of like there's a user need and then there's the delivery of the value, okay? That's pretty much lead time, okay? How long does that take to happen? Okay? And when you've got teams starting the work like here, and then you've got cycle time, which is that cycle of work where they'll deliver an increment of value over a certain amount of time, yeah? And then there's this other bit we don't really talk about that much. No one really talks about the value being realised by an end user or a customer. We think like, yes, it's in production, way, we've done, close it down. But there's this other part that we don't really talk about. And then once we've mapped this kind of thing out, we can start to ask some questions around the team. We can say, should the whole team be involved here? If they're not, that's a problem, probably. If we have to wait for QA to sign off on work here, there's probably some problems there, some wait times. And then there's this other question of what do we even know what's happening for the customers? Or do we just go, done, perfect, who cares? We've done our bit, we've ticked the box, we've moved a ticket, yeah? So, what happens if we don't focus on lead time, we don't focus on flow, if we don't focus on these things? Does anyone know what this is? It'd be super impressive if somebody knows what this is. No? Okay, so this is the waiting place. And this is from Dr. Seuss's book, All the Places You'll Go, okay? It's a really good book. It's not just for kids, I promise. So in this book, the waiting place is where everyone waits. It says its name on the tin, really. And they're waiting for something to happen, yeah? They're waiting for things to happen. No one's moving forward. Everybody's stuck. It's a dull and unproductive place. Has anyone worked at a big bank? Okay. So I think the problem we've got is this becomes our waiting place quite often as a team, yeah? We need to get out of this waiting place, yeah? We need to get out of having a code review kind of ticket and maybe a testing column and things like that, because these are our waiting places where things don't happen and we kind of maximise the lead time instead of minimising it.
If there's a meme, it's probably my slide.
What's the cat meme?
So the other common constraint is lack of ownership. So we are not just talking about the everyday ownership, but it's also taking ownership on the quality, once again, a buzzword. But what I mean is also that we need to reestablish it and its understanding of what ownership is. It's not just, I have done my job, that's my ownership, that's my accountability, bye. So it's more about proactively advocating and including everybody. So as an example, so the area I'm working at Booking, it's insurance. And as you can imagine, we have, as a product, we live in other people's spaces. We have one panel that is in this page, another panel in that place, and there's a lot of data going on, especially since we are working with partners who are providing the actual insurance. So we work with data finance, and app, all these things. And what we need to do is not only advocate for testing is important, we need to think about this, it still is, but we also need to think of the bigger picture where it was, okay, where does the data go? What comes in the end? What is important? And what do we need to think about that is important to our stakeholders up and down the stream? So you need to include and advocate for their importance as well, because they are not always staying in those conversations, especially those that are kept only inside your team. So you need to pull the right people in and speak for them when you can't. Agree on what good looks like in all aspects. So once again, maybe for your team, what good looks like is we get a lot of bookings, right? But if you think about further down the stream, where data and finance happens, none of this works if they are not happy, if they are not getting the data they want, if they are not going through the right channels. We will have issues with our partners, with our compliance, accounts, you name it. So it's about think about what good looks like for the whole journey all the time. And that's not something that you can't say that, oh, well, we'll think about it when it comes, because first we sort out the front end. No, you have to do it from the beginning. And then this is a question that should be for everybody. How would you like to be treated? Because if you are in one of those other teams, you would be like, why didn't you tell me this earlier? Why didn't you tell me this 6 months ago? Now you want me to get it done in 2 weeks because you have a go live date that is now. You have a peak coming up, so you want to, of course, make a lot of money, as much money as possible when there's peak. But I can't do it, and I have other priorities made. So work inside your scope, that's fine, but communicate and think outside the scope, because you might have your own scope, but other people are linked and impacting your scope. So you need to think about having the ownership of the whole team, but not possession, because that's a very important difference you have to make. You are not possessing your product, you are having the ownership of it, but there's no possession, because this is when you don't let go and you don't let other people to have a look into it, and they need to do that in order to get all the other things right. And whatever you are doing that is not unblocking you, you need to rethink it and go back. And don't go and wait for the retro where you can say, well, actually, we should have talked to these guys first. That's way too late. And the next constraint is that when the team is not seen as a unit of delivery. And I will let this cat meme sink in for a bit. I was just told by the vet that our cat is 7.1 kilos. That's not my cat, but he looks similar. So, unit of delivery. So let's start with, we have mentioned the other activities, but let's go back to the development and testing as well. So it is a group activity. And as a friend of mine said, and I will always remember it, development is not actually just writing code. Development is when we developed an idea into a product that people can use for the purpose that they need it. So actually, every time, whether it's product design, developers, or test, they are all part of the product development. That somebody's writing the code there, they are just utilizing a programming language to get us from A to B. So we need to make sure that this starts from the beginning, that it's a group activity from beginning before we start writing the code or we start verifying the functions that it's supposed to do. And we need to make sure that we keep on learning. I think, referring back to one of the talks, when you're talking, you're just saying things that you're just repeating things you already know. When you are listening, that's when you learn. So by having all those group activities and getting everybody involved and people outside, I can't stress enough with data, we actually have a new mantra, which is think data first. You will learn that all these things that you actually should care about. And you need to focus on capabilities and not roles, because there's a job description, that's what you applied for. If that's what, and because you are in that job now, clearly you qualify somehow for that. But if you're not thinking further than your role, that's what you're ever going to do. So you need to think about the capabilities and where you can grow and what capabilities you can absorb regardless of whatever you're called on your contract. Which goes back to testability. So testability is important. There is advocacy that we talked about before, that you should be advocating for others. Testability is the same. So it is about, can we test this? I don't know if you have been in that lucky situation I have, where you get told that, well, this can't be tested. We'll just put it on prod. Well, can we at least test it on prod? No, but we'll see it in monitoring. If in a week's time nothing flares up, we'll be fine. So this is not something that we should be accepting. So from the very beginning, we need to think about, is this testable? Can we build in testability? There are a lot of things that we can't test by default, but we can put a little Easter egg here, put a little Easter egg there. Give me clear clause, give me, put something that says hello world in red, so I know it's a no-go. Hello world in green, so it's a go-ahead. Anything that a simple mind can understand is fine, but we need to think about that. And if you can't, don't build it, because this is about the value again. Why are we spending all these hours and effort to put out something that we don't know what it's doing and if it's going to do what it's going to do? So if you can't test it, don't build it. And if you don't test it, because there's a lot of stuff out there already, I'm sure we can all relate on legacy code and stuff like that, get rid of it, make it anew. The pain is real, but do you want continuous pain or do you want short pain? And this is where it has to be a team thing, because by not having something that is testable, you're blocking everything because you are not writing the code that is testable, you cannot go test it, and then it goes back to product, who is like, well, I don't know if we are getting the value that I wanted out of it, so once again, what's the point? And so this is just to reiterate what we've talked about. So we are able to deliver more by separating less. So less different stages, less columns, less of us and them, me and the rest of the world. Because if you look at this, if we go from decision making, so this happens that, oh, we have this business need, or the customer has this feedback, or this just makes us more cash, then it goes to design, somebody puts a fancy look out of it so it's more attractive, And the developer's like, okay, yeah, fine, we need a green button there, let's make a green button. And Tesco says, well, actually, this is the wrong kind of green. You will still get a certain percentage of satisfaction there, but you will have, in each stage, you lose a little bit of the learning from each other, from the understanding of why we are doing this, why is this button so important. The loss of considerations, should it have been a different shape in a different location? Is the button accessible? Misalignment chances, so these are the things where some other team actually might come, well, actually, that's the spot we wanted to have our button in. So, and then the missed team dynamics, because when we go back to we are actually people working with people, we can't do that if we knowingly put barriers between people. So there's a lot of team dynamics that you're missing where you have a lot of, well, the tester, they're this and they're that. While if we always had the team together, still not guaranteed, you can't, with 100% of the team, you won't be having 100% of satisfaction. That's not going to happen, especially with personalities and everybody's requirements and needs. But you will have the idea sharing, learning, and the future proofing, because you are already thinking what are we going to do next. It's not always about reacting to everything that everybody says, like, oh, okay, you are right, we need to stop everything. It's more about, okay, we've heard you, we'll take that into account, so you can already future proof what are you going to do next. And we've got Andy again.
Yeah, this is my favorite slide. I use this every single presentation I think I've ever done. It's like the unit of delivery is the team, right? Because it's all people at the end of the day. Love using this. So is anyone heard of Deming?
Yeah.
Cool. So Deming was an American kind of like business consultant, and during World War II, he helped with like the American production during the wartime, like trying to make more efficient processes. But his kind of main work was after World War II, when he helped like with the rebuilding of Japan, okay, and helped with their processes. And he's kind of like, one of his famous quotes is that it would be better if everybody worked together as a system with the aim for everybody to win. It's like, yeah, that makes perfect sense, right? So how do we do it as a team? How do we work together? Has anyone kind of done mob programming or ensemble programming? Maybe a couple of people, cool. So it's a whole team approach developing software, and we achieve better outcomes when we work together, right? It's all about working together, the team being the unit of delivery. It's a really, really good way of doing it. So quick 2-second of what mob programming is and why you should start doing it. So mob programming is basically having one screen, and there's a driver there, okay? And there's only one screen, one keyboard. I don't know why that guy's got a keyboard, he shouldn't have one. He's not allowed one anymore. But basically one keyboard, one driver, and then lots of navigators, okay? And the idea is that the driver is basically just pressing buttons, okay? Could be anyone, could be my nan. And it doesn't really matter who that person is, because the navigators are the ones with the collective wisdom, okay? They're the ones that are saying what we need to do. They're people that are going to help us to understand what we should be writing. They're the ones that are going to be talking about the actual kind of like, how do we connect this to that? And they swap. Okay, so every so often, like 20 minutes, whatever it needs to be, you will swap. Somebody else will become the driver. You could have guest experts in there, you could have people from different parts of the business. We one time had a guy from the warehouse who brought his high-vis and was wearing his high-vis for some reason. And we had him, and he couldn't even find where the keyboards. So it was good, but it was good because we learned how to do logistics stuff with the person that knows how to do it, okay? It doesn't have to be a QA, but having everybody together means you front load a lot of risk, okay? And the goal of it, okay, is that the whole team has the capabilities within it to solve business problems and front load risk. Capabilities of test, the capabilities of development, product owners, whoever you need, brought into that process, yeah? And this is something I've been obsessed with the last couple of weeks. So was anyone at Agile Manchester? I know Sophie was. Anyone else? Okay, so somebody called Emily Webber was there, and she was drawing these weird things on the wall. Okay, and Emily Webber's like an Agile consultant. And it's a capability column, okay? And it's like the skills that people have, okay? Like some people are really good at agile delivery, coaching, things like that. And I've been obsessed with it for like 4 weeks now. And the reason I've been obsessed with it is because I really like progression frameworks and capabilities and stuff that we can help teams get better at. So I started putting together with somebody who knows a QA about, well, can you show me what you would do if you were doing a capability column? And they kind of said, well, I'm really good at exploratory testing. I'm not really great at coding. I'll do a bit of Cypress stuff. Really good at facilitation, contract testing, regression testing, stakeholder management. Not great at CI/CD, but they really love observability. And it's like, amazing. I spend lots of time with you. And the reason is because when we're building these progression frameworks, we can start to build these heat maps up of people. These are all the skills, and these are roughly the shape of people, yeah? The idea is that some people on the team will be really, really good at these skills that we've agreed, some people won't, but we can figure out opportunities to say, okay, if somebody's like a 1 or a 2, like they're okay at it, but they're not great, pair them up with the people that are like a 4 and a 5 for things like API testing. So kind of cross-skilling across the team. So I guess the next bit I want to talk about is like, how do we get everyone to care about what we do as a team, right? We've said we're going to do all these amazing things, everyone's loving life, everyone's together, but it's not really that simple. And sometimes like we forget that it's not just about delivering stuff, it's delivering it for customers. So coming back to the comb for a second, something that I think was really interesting, and I think it really helps people to understand that they work as a unit of delivery, is when they're faced with observability. So if people familiar with observability as a concept? A few people, cool. So it's basically understanding what's happening in production right now in front of customers. That's basically it, okay? And the really good quote by Charity Majors is that, can you understand what's happening inside the system, any internal state the system may get itself into, simply by asking questions from the outside? This isn't logging onto boxes. This is, if somebody says to you from the business, are orders going out? It's like, can you answer that? Do you know? Are you aware? Is there problems that you're not aware of? And it's how do you get the system and the stuff you do to help you get there, okay? So this is a real world example from Cinch when I used to work there. So this is the order squad, and you have this motherboard on Datadog, and this was their observability home. And it had these questions, okay? First one, are orders looking healthy? Within that were the widgets that answered whether that was right. Is our Pat Exchange service healthy? What changes have been released? Do we have any incidents? Are we seeing errors? Are my APIs healthy? All these questions to be answered, and they were answered by the widgets that are inside each one. But the whole team on that, no one person, it wasn't any one person's job, it was the whole team's role, is to make sure that we can answer these questions at any point in time. So I think we need to kind of focus our testing efforts a little bit more on field testing. If we think of the things that happen before it goes out in front of customers as the lab testing, we understand the rough kind of environment, we can do repeatable testing as part of a CI/CD build. Like, field testing is kind of the bit afterwards, right? When it's actually in front of people, in front of real customers, when they go crazy and break stuff, and that's good, right? So going back to kind of like the teams for a second, like it's really hard. I'm saying all these things that we should be doing, but how do we actually get better at it? How do we define what good looks like for testing? Like, do we need a team to focus on testing? I'm not suggesting a test team, Jan, please don't. No, I'm not. I'm not suggesting putting test teams in place around these kind of things, but I'm suggesting that we actually look at community practice. Is anyone part of community practice? ACE, a few people, which is really, or a guild. Some people call it guilds. ACE, a few people. So what this basically is a group of people that get together, okay? And they get better at what they do when they spend time together. Like all the QAs having time in, every couple of weeks where they learn how to get better at doing the QA stuff, not just what the company wants them to do, but how do they get better at like Postman or something like that, for example. And community practice are really, really good because you can get all the QAs together and invite all the non-QA people as well, provide pizza, provide love, and agree how we want to do these things as an organisation and what good looks like. When we say testability, what do we mean by that? When we say observability, what do we mean by that? Once you've done that, you enable the teams to build the capability in everyone's role, okay? Going back to the capability column. Because this is what I want to do. There's me being obsessed about capabilities. And then we want to extend the skills in everybody in the team. So everyone's comb grows in a weird way. But what we do is we start to see these capabilities get better over time. So how do we know if we're getting better? Nudges in the right direction, right? We want to understand, so we can apply fitness functions. Is anyone familiar with fitness functions? So fitness functions, everyone's got one in the car. Miles per gallon is a fitness function. And what that says is, good or bad. It's basically that. It's like, are we moving towards something or are we moving away from it? So miles per gallon, if you're driving like a maniac, young, your miles per gallon may go down. The better and maybe the safer you drive, your miles per gallon will go up. If you've got a sports car, you're probably going to get low miles per gallon. Like, it's an indicator of good versus bad, okay? We're moving towards a goal or away from it. So we can apply fitness functions in what we do to get better at how we do stuff. So have our capabilities grown as a team around testing? Remember the combs? Like, have they changed? Have those shapes changed? Have we done like a catch up with teams? Is it getting better? Or is it actually, our skills getting worse? How many hours have we spent mob programming this sprint? If we haven't done any, we'll have a clear indicator of red, right? We've not done the thing we're supposed to be doing. Or like, how many API endpoints have got contract testing enabled? If we don't, have, maybe we've got 100 endpoints because we're nuts. If only 5 of those have got contract testing on them, and after 2 weeks it's 5 again, then we're probably moving away from the goal if we want to get better at this as a team. Because ultimately we want to coach, mentor, guide, and advocate, so we don't get stuck in the waiting place, right?
So for the record, when I was 19, I could drive in icy conditions when it was dark, and when I could not use the brake when we are going down hills on oil in the hill. But I failed my driving test because I couldn't start the car up hills. So now you know. And also I can't tell left from right, and being in a country where driving happens on the other side is really bad for me. If I ever drive, stay home. So, yeah, so in the end of the day, so if you don't have any conflict in your team, if you're comfortable with everything, everybody's working along, why do we need to do anything about it? Why can't we just get along? Why don't we just, get our paycheck and move on? Well, I think it's our professional responsibility to work further. I have been a hiring manager in the previous place, and what I look for are people who are going to bring us further. Not something that you're going to tell me what you have done today, but also what you want to do. So as I said before, by getting the job that you are in, hopefully that means that you qualify for the current job description. But the industry is moving along, we want to be moving along as well, we want to get all those skills. So we need to find out how to do those difficult conversations where we actually need to get people out of their comfort zone, tell people that actually you are in a bubble that you don't even know that you are, and while we are fighting for our testers to get more involved and to, move left and have all the testing considerations, they might not be in a better place, they just don't know. So we need to help them, advocate for them as well. That is how we grow, and we need to be able to understand the other roles that we are working with, instead of just tolerating, oh well, that's just, product being product, devs being devs, Andy being Andy. And we need to be able to show and demonstrate what we mean with that. So going back to community of practice, we have something at Booking that we call initiatives. It is initiated by the testing community, but by putting out what we have currently in place, what live examples there are, we have been able to collect a group of people that represent different functions to work out, in this case it's performance testing, to work out what do we have currently, review those, what learning paths we have, what workshop we could be building, and what good looks like, what tooling guidelines we could be making. And we actually have non-testers to lead subgroups, because it's too much for just one big group to handle, especially since everybody's Zoom calls, it's just 8 hours per day, isn't it? So it works. You just need to not give up and explain why this is important, and give people the freedom and give them existing material that they can say based on it, well, actually there are things like, actually this is out of date, actually this is very good, so we can keep. You need to allow people to have that flow of their experience, but also information and input that they can construct into new thoughts out of it. And this is how we need to observe and identify, not just guess. So we need to have a look what good looks like, what isn't good, get other people on board instead of putting a finger in the air. And we need to enforce the multipliers for good instead of just hope. I like hope, but when it comes to, shall we put this on live, I don't trust hope. And in the end of the day, if we go back to the same timelines, right, it doesn't matter if you have columns, if you have stages. In the end of the day, we are all in that same boat, and none of us arrives, none of our product is live, and none of us has provided the value our jobs are supposed to provide when we have a product that is good enough and functional for the general public, or whoever your end user is. Of course, you might have internal users, etc. And I want to say good enough because part of the learning is also understanding what we could have done better earlier. But that conversation would be better if it wasn't just we have realized that all the things we have done could have done better. It would be nice if some of the things we have done could have done better. There's a huge difference in there. And are we giving you any answers? So I have certainly talked a lot. Andy also. But it's not so much of having the answers, and I'm not going to say ask the right questions because I think you all have been told that you all know how to do that. It's about looking into other people, what they could be doing, how can you help them understand. And I think we are all, as a community, we are working very hard with the, curing the imposter syndrome, asking the right questions, getting people to think about quality and all that. But now, how do we get everybody moving all directions and not just test moving left? And we have to do that by starting our mindset where we understand that everybody can Google something, everybody can break something, and we all work on stuff, but sometimes we need to tell people what is that stuff and what is their stuff. I do not recall we had another slide, and I was right.
No, that's it. That's all.
So
that's the end.
I think that was us. If anybody is interested, I actually have the team topologies book on me. So I can pass that around. But other than that, thank you.